All right, should be going. Okay, I'm gonna get my folder open that has all my stuff in it. It's kind of messy. So now I want to create a new folder inside my FA19 folder. And I'm gonna name this one OOP for Object-Oriented Programming. Now in my OOP folder, I want to create a new file. And I'm going to name this point.py because it's going to define my point. Now, a couple of things about classes. A class defines an object. So you're not going to get enough information today to memorize this or to take any tests. Remember, we're just trying to get a feel for it, the understanding that this exists. Whenever we define classes or objects in any programming language, our class name usually starts with an uppercase letter. So when we're with Python, what are we calling this file? Point.py. So I'm going to go ahead and put some comments in here.
Point.py.
Uh-huh. And yesterday I graded the image glitch ones. And when we were doing our sample program and we copied that code from Runestone, we didn't put comments in. So I got a lot of people, don't forget, silly comments. So I'm going to try to not leave them out of this one. So our purpose is to define a class that describes a point. And do you want to say more? This is really like a geometric point. Geometric point. An X, Y position in space, right? Because that's what we use points for. Where is this floating out in the nothingness? Okay, so the first thing that I need is my class statement. So I'm going to say the class statement defines an object class. And it's a real easy statement. We just have that keyword class and then the name of our class followed by a colon.
Is it supposed to underline it?
No, it's just complaining because I don't have anything under it.
No, mine's completely underlined is what I'm saying.
Oh, really?
Yeah, mine's completely underlined.
Yep. I don't have any underlined. Mine did too.
Then I italicized the class and then that's why I wasn't trying to pick on you. I'm asking because that's what happened when I coded it. So I don't know. No, so I'm good.
Let's keep going, see what happens. I think it's just, yeah, it doesn't know what in the world you're doing with it. Because now I've got some weird red because I don't have anything underneath this. Okay, now in our Runestone stuff, they use the double quotes. I've been using the single tick marks, 3 of them to make a comment block. They use doubles. Point class for representing X, Y coordinates. Now, I put even though we already had that information up here, I'm putting it down here right under our class statement because Python will actually grab that. And if somebody tries to use our point class, whenever it's showing helpful information to them, it'll show them that narrative, that documentation information for us. So they can see that right underneath it. So that's why we have to put it right under our class statement. Now, when we define a class, we have to say, how does an instance of this class come to be? So we're going to create a constructor for the class. And this is actually kind of a creation event, sort of the birth of the object, if you will. Now, we have to have a real special name for this creation event. It has to have 2 underscores, and then the word init followed by 2 more underscores. So as I type underscores, Visual Studio Code's IntelliSense is giving me some suggestions, and it's saying, hey, you like to use all of these a lot. Yep, I want this underscore underscore init. Now, that's kind of weird code, and that's what's required. Now, underneath that again, I want some comment documentation. I'm going to say create a new point at the origin.
Okay, fine. I was wondering.
Now, Visual Studio Code put this super.init in there for me. I don't want that. I'm going to get rid of it. So my init event, my create an instance of a point event, needs to know how to set its x variable. It's going to set it to 0. And it's like, self, how should I set my y variable? Well, let's set it to 0 too. Now, if somebody creates an instance of a point, at this particular point, we're going to be at 0, 0.
Okay.
So let's do it. I want a backspace so that I'm all the way over to the edge. And now let's test our class. Ready? To test it, I'm going to set up a variable p, and I'm going to say p is a point. And then I'm going to say variable q is a point. Now, both of them, if I printed out anything about them, would just be 0, 0, because that's all I have right now. So I'm going to print this. Nothing seems to have happened with the points. I'm just making you type stuff. It's making you crazy.
I feel like we've already gone over this. Why do we call it self? Like, I get the x and y and that those are the coordinates, but what does the self do for that code?
It's just saying that this particular instance of a point.
Okay.
Now, another important thing is, here is the end of our class. So as soon as I quit having indented code, the class ended. So down here, this code is outside of the class, and it's testing it. You'd go, what? What? They're crazy. That's all right. You can say that for now. Now, if we run this, we should just see this print output. Nothing seems to have happened. Let's try it.
Yep.
It's saying invalid syntax.
I'm not getting that.
So is this self.x and self.y like a pre-programmed Python thing?
It's required. Yeah. What kind of errors are you getting?
Syntax error, invalid syntax.
So fix that, because that's just you.
What's wrong with mine? What?
And I've got nothing seems to have happened with the point. So make sure you're getting that. I had to search for it. So let's try something different. Did you find it?
No, that's weird.
You found it?
I didn't know
It
the
says
comments could affect your code.
No. It apparently my script one comment was a bit too far indented.
Oh, got mad. Okay. Well, when we created our points down here, it would be nice if we could say, I would like this point to be at position 1,1 or 45,7, because right now our point is pretty meaningless. We don't have much point to our point because we're just setting them to zeros. So how could we make it? Yeah, we want to make it to where we can pass that in. So we have to have those set up as parameters. So go back to the def statement for your init, and it's always going to have a parameter of itself, that self parameter. But we want to pass in an initial value for x and an initial value for y. And now when someone creates an instance of our point, instead of setting x to 0, I want to set x to the initial value of x. And instead of setting y to 0, I want to set it to the initial value of y. Now then we should be able to set our p point equal to, let's say 7, 6.
So it doesn't care about the self argument, you need anything past it?
We don't have to do anything with it, but we have to make sure it's there so Python can use it. Let's run this thing. I'm going to bring back over the Runestone version because it's got it set up in the visualizer. And so I want to try running this now in this visualizer code. So right now it's sitting here at my class statement. If I click forward, notice it just read through all of my class and got to the first line of code outside of the class, which is to create our P variable. So now I'm going to click forward and let it execute that line of code. It says create a point at 7, 6. All right, so Python says, oh, you want to create a point? I'm going to use the init method of the point class. Then I'm going to set our x variable and set our y variable, and then I'm done. I'm back. Now, if we look at what's gone on in memory since that happened, it couldn't show it side by side for us. But when we created the instance of the point, this point object was placed in memory, and it knows that it has all of these things, its state variables. Then as we created our points named P, it set x to 7 and y to 6. If you've got this Runestone stuff there in front of you, try running it and just kind of get an idea of what's going on there.
It's saying that I'm missing.
An argument
Yeah.
for the init x and init y.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same error. I
Let's
got.
see what you've got. Let me show it to you. So your def statement should look like this.
Mhm. Yeah, mine doesn't like that for some reason.
Mine isn't even lighting up for some reason. Set the parameters. Like, you know how it changes color from the usual default color? It's not doing that for me.
Let's see what's going on.
So
I think we have the same error, I don't know.
positional argument.
But
What
It's
is
saying I'm missing these arguments.
So just comment out that Q one.
I'm gonna see if that helps.
Yeah, because it's just mad about this one down here. So let's see if we can get rid of it.
It just did the print statement.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
see it.
yeah, I did that too.
Get rid of that error for us.
Mm.
Okay, so again, we're still not seeing a lot. It's still really like, what do you want us to do here? So that's okay. We just have to keep adding to our class till we can get it to do something that's meaningful to us. Now, here's the cute picture of it, though. This point that we created is named P. We don't care anything right now about any of the actions available, so our outer circle is empty. But our state variables, X and Y, now have values that aren't zeros. So this is really what we have now for the state of our point. So let's add some methods to our class.
Okay, gotcha.
Here they are in our code. We're going to add a getX and a getY method so that we can pass those point values to others. So in our point class, we want to backspace and make sure we're lined up with our def statement for our init. And we want getX. And in our getX, again, we have to be worried about ourselves. And all we're going to do in this one is just return our X value.
Returns, is it return self-X?
Self.x. And then for our get Y, we want to return self.y. I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm going to uncomment out our Q, and let's make our Q, oh, never mind. I don't need that one yet. Let's print out X is plus P dot get X.
Wait, is that in a print statement?
Yes,
Okay, just scrolled over a little.
there it is. You see it? So now in our print statement, we're going to run our getX function to see what the value is of X on our point named P. So let's run it.
It's added as a string.
You know, saying, must be string, not integer.
So what can we do? It's in your print. How can you fix that?
Oh, we need the colon after is.
Nope.
No.
Can't I cast it as a string?
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I was so nervous. I was like, ew.
Don't be nervous.
I was
This is
like,
hot out
ew.
there.
We
I don't
could
know if our
mark
back
those,
is with
like,
us.
Cox and most of them.
I'm gonna run it again. Oh, now I've got X is 7. That looks better. So could we do the same thing and get out our value of Y? I could add more to our print and say Y is, and then I could do P dot get Y. Now remember, these are functions. That's why I have to have the open and close parenthesis after them. because we are not passing any parameters into those functions. So now I've got X is 7, Y is 6. So that looks right.
So in our init,
Oh, there you
is
go.
our self.x us creating a variable called x in self, or is that like actual?
No, you're actually
So we could call
creating
it self dot.
47.
Google it or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, whatever you want. So like a student, say we wanted to create an object that had to do with students. With students, we would have, you know, like name, birthday, number of credits, GPA, phone, all of those kinds of things that we'd want to
So that'd
keep
be
track about
self-dot.
that student.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so-
Yeah, and then for students, you know, for behaviors, we might have things like register, you know, drop, post a grade, or whatever we would have that would be associated just with students in that student object. So we would use whatever stuff we needed for that type of object.
Did you comment out that previous print statement that says nothing seems to have happened?
I got rid of it completely.
Um,
Just messing with you. So now our point is great. You know, this is just an awesome point. It's keeping track of the point, right? It knows where it is. This one is at 7,6. But let's make our point actually do something. How about if we set up a function that calculates how far our point is from the point of origin, from 0, 0. Let's do that. And then we'll have some actual code in this thing that matters. So I'm going to go back to our class code, and right after our getY function, again, lined up, I want my def statement to be lined up under the previous one. I want to create a function distance from origin. Now, in our distance, how about distance? In our distance from origin, we don't need any parameters passed, just like our get y and our get x. But we still always have to know we're working with the right instance of the point, working with itself. Because we could have some other points that we might be comparing to. Okay, so if I'm going to do distance from origin, let me put this formula in so that you can copy it. We're going to say the x coordinate to the power of 2 plus the y coordinate to the power of 2.
I look away for a second. as well, but-
You're
And then we're
watching
finally
it.
going to take a square root of that.
Oh, goodness.
So x to the power of 2 plus y to the power of 2, square root. So that's a pretty ugly math. We don't want to do that math everywhere we go,
No.
right? So now we don't have to, because we've black boxed that math. We put that math inside this point class. Now, anytime we need to know the distance from origin, we can just use our class, and it already knows how to do that. So we don't have to worry. So let's add that into our tester code. So down at the bottom where we're testing our class, we're going to set our point to be 7,6. And then let's do a new print statement. Let's print out the distance from origin. Let's try running it. Oh, there's a big old giant number, so that's correct.
Oh,
Did
that's
it work?
yes.
So this calculation is mathy, but I mean, we could handle it. One example that I kind of use a lot is from when I worked at Conoco. And when I worked at Conoco, one of my friends got picked to write a program to calculate how much product, how much oil or gas or whatever was still in a storage tank. So if you've ever driven, I don't know, Mount Vernon and Miller towards Springfield, well, towards
Right.
Joplin, I guess, that way, not this way.
Right.
Has a bunch of storage tanks, and if you've ever looked at them, you know they're not very sturdy. So when they create a storage tank for oil, they put those sides up and that top on it, but they kind of like do these sort of things like squash and squelch, like we were talking about, those things. They can grow and they can kind of fall down into the ground a little bit, and they do all sorts of terrible things as far as adjusting themselves. They're also not, they also don't just have the roof. They actually have like a lid inside there so that as the oil or gas gets taken out of the tank, the lid stays right on top of the product. That's because if my tank were full of jet fuel or something that's highly explosive, I have to keep the air away from that product. So the lid is going to kind of keep floating down with the product as it gets used up. So Jennifer had to write the code to come up with a calculation for how much oil is left in this tank. And it was awful. She worked with engineers and stuff for months. Mm-hmm.
Just being nosy, did she have to like incorporate like how much air they had to leave in there?
Yeah,
Because
oh,
with my
so much stuff.
propane,
Uh-huh.
I thought 100% was 100%. They're like, no, technically 80% is 100% because we still have to leave room
For that lid and that air
Yeah.
bubble. And yeah, she had so much stuff like that. I mean, seriously, she had to meet with engineers for months. And they would explain to her how this
Interesting.
tank had settled and this tank. And so through all this time, she wrote all this code that they gave her, you know, as far as engineers coming in saying, okay, now we figured this out. Because they were in the process of trying to figure out exactly how they could calculate this too. So once Jennifer got that all done, that code needs to be black boxed in a class somewhere, right? People from all over the country, not just Conoco, but other oil companies used her code too, because this is something that's never been done before. So we don't want every programmer that comes along to have to figure out all those calculations and how to do all that stuff. It's pretty messy. We want the other programmers that come along to be able to say, the tank is 7 feet full, it's 14 feet tall.
Right.
How much product does it contain?
That's where
So-
comments come in.
And that's where comments
you
come
can
in.
Right.
And that's
okay.
where our separation of code responsibility becomes so important. Because if we have really complex code like that, and we keep it in its own function, in its own class, the tank class, then we can just reuse it over and over and over. And if it has to be changed, changing it in that one place is going to change everywhere it's used automatically, right? Because we don't have to go out to all those places to change it. So that's why it's so important for us to be thinking about object-oriented programming as we go further in our learning of things. Let's see, there's one other thing they want. Oh, how we can use multiple points. So let's try one more thing with this in our tester. So right now, I'm not going to add anything else to our point class. We have everything we need. But down here at the bottom where we're testing it, let's change this a little bit. I think now I want to add a our own function. So let's create a function called distance. Now our distance function is outside of our point class. We might not really want that, but right now, that's the way it is. In our distance function, we're gonna say, okay, you have to pass me 2 points if you want me to calculate the difference between those 2 points, the distance. I can't calculate it unless you pass me 2. So that's why our parameters say we need 0.1 and 0.2. And then we're going to say, I want to take the location of the y coordinate in 0.2, and I want to subtract the coordinate of the y, or where am I? X, sorry, hang on. X minus X, Y minus Y. So 0.2 x coordinate, we're going to decrease that by the x coordinate of 0.1 to get our y difference. Same thing. Now let's do a little bit more in that function. After we've got those differences, we can say that our distance is now the square root between each of these differences to the power of 2. So all our math geniuses are like, well, obviously. And then finally, in our function here, we're going to return our distance. Now I see that I need to import the math library. You can see I can be real cheaty and do that right before I use it. We always want to put it up at the top, but we can actually put it anywhere. Okay, so this distance function, it's in our tester, and it uses 2 different points. So let's create a point P and make it 4, 3. And then we'll create our Q point again. And use 0, 0. Can you see it all? Do you need me to go up a little bit? This code doesn't scroll very good. It scrolls like 5 lines no matter what I do. I bet I can find that setting somewhere. Okay, so now let's print out the distance between P and Q. So we're using our point class to create 2 different points. Then we're going to use our distance function, and we're going to pass it those 2 points. Our distance function is going to take advantage of some of the behavior within our class to get those locations and print out the distance.
For some reason, mine doesn't like my people. Mine forward actually.
Let me make sure mine runs so I don't have something wrong with it.
I don't know why. Is it because it's too far? Usually it's because I'm just like this. Do I need to come in out that way?
Oh, no, it's because you're undercase, lowercase p.
To get 5?
Always something like that. Thank you.
Did everybody get 5?
Let's see. Yep.
Very good. Now, one last thing with our class. Sometimes we would like to be able to print out information about our class without having to create all of this test information. So we can actually create a function that represents our class as a string. And with Python, that's called a special name __str. So instead of using str to cast something as a string, we can actually use this __str function to represent our class as a string. So let's put that in. Now I'm within our point class.
Okay.
So the string representation of our point is going to be something that says x equal, whatever our X value is, plus we're going to do a comma and say Y equals, and then add Y. I'm going to put a comment on this one. Return our point as a string. So notice how in programming, this is one of those areas where we're kind of taking some liberties, right? I mean, our point is not ever going to be a string. It's always going to be an X and a Y location. But if I want to print out the information about that point, I can use this string method. So let's try it. Come down to your tester. And finally, I'm going to print, here is our point. And P. I'll put a space there. Now what we should get is, here is our point, and then our output from our string method, X equals whatever, comma, Y equals whatever. So I'll run it. Open, it's mad at me again. Must be a string. Even as I'm doing it as a string, like you told, I'm making it a string and I still have to make it a string. There it is. Because it says this is an object now, not a string.
So,
Yeah, if we just do P without the string inside of it,
Then it's okay.
that's okay. But it doesn't like the fact that we're trying to call it class, I think, with strings.
this is gonna sound sassy, but it's just to get clarification. Is it redundant to call this a string when was that what we were trying to avoid, is having to do that? Or am I missing?
No, you're right.
It says
Okay.
one
Right.
object has no attribute get X.
So find your def statement
Yep.
for your get X. See if you have an uppercase or lowercase x probably. Because our functions have the uppercase X.
I mean,
Did you get your glasses today?
I get
Oh, in your office. Which way is it?
Okay, so
This
this is definitely not third grade spelling. Third grade spelling, your spelling teacher expects you to know how to spell every word when the class is over, right? This is not third grade spelling. This is your first introduction to object-oriented programming. So it should be kind of like, huh? But yet there are some concepts I'm understanding.
I just remember I could steal your eyes to look at my point.
Sure, sure.
What are these define, like get Y, distance from origin? What are those called? Are those objects? Or
Those are methods, which are
Methods.
functions within a class.
okay.
So any sort of function within a class. What you doing?
I mean, it printed, I didn't get an error, but where it said my point is, I wasn't expecting that. Is that what you're wanting?
Got an open parenthesis kind of.
Right, oh, you mean in here, where?
No, should be two underscores on each
That's what I
side.
did, but watch it, like, turn, and make my code look funky, so that's why I did it like that. Oh, now that you two are here.
No, I'm saying we forgot. Ooh, never mind. You didn't. Never mind. I did that before. If you.
Oh, here's your point, okay.
If you do
What are
it,
you-
if you do it like get Y, and you don't use an open parenthesis, it just returns like a really weird value.
Okay, so just keep that code back in the back of your mind and let your brain work on it while you're sleeping. Sometimes our brains figure things out, and that's what I want is for you to have this basic introduction so that next time you come across this idea, it's not as foreign as it is this time. I'm going to go back to Runestone though and look at the turtle stuff.
Oh,
On the hands-on, we only have to do the turtle, but we can do 2 and 3.
You don't have to do any of them. They're all extra credit. So whatever you want.
I thought they were, but then the way he was talking, okay.
You're fine.
I was freaking out going, oh my God, did I miss something?
Nope, you're fine. So let's go to turtle. I want to go to Hello Little Turtles 4.1.
oh, I'm sorry to you too. I'm apologizing to Thomas. Sorry to all of you. I'm clumsy.
Now it's been a little while. We looked at turtle, but not very much. So turtle is an object-oriented facility and that comes with Python that we can use to draw pictures. So when we're using the turtle program, we're actually creating a turtle object. So let's see, I'm going to try this in Visual Studio Code.
I didn't even think to try it visual. I've been doing it in idle just because I'm leery of visual now.
Yeah.
Because visual doesn't always execute codes as consistently as idle does.
Yeah, let's use idle because turtle especially.
I didn't mean to do that.
No,
sorry.
no, I would rather switch now than that, than all of us have
It just-
trouble.
It just seems that,
Because it just doesn't work very well with turtle.
Right.
Let's go to idle.
know
You
it's
love
true.
idle.
It is true. What are just because your visual code.
Will you stay in Visual Studio Code and when you have trouble, we'll say, oh, you should have gone to idle.
You stay in your office.
Either way is fine. I'm going to go to idle. Now I want to do a new file.
I know it works because you printed off the one
In my first file, this
doesn't
is
work
just
for
going to
me.
be my turtle. So I'm going to do file, save as, these blabbers up here. I'm going to try and save this into my 120 folder. And I'm just going to make this turtles.
You're not turtling up for your turtle stuff.
Fun with turtles.
Tired.
She's a tired turtle.
Fun with turtles. No.
Use turtles. I always think one time at the river, my daughter had to bring home a turtle. You know what happened to it.
Oh, did it die?
Eventually, it was a long, brutal, bloody thing because she wouldn't let me take it back to the river.
What do you mean?
Like, you know, she kept just being, no, it's fine. It was not.
Was it crashed?
Not right away.
Oh.
What are we in a different one now? We're in chapter 4. We're still.
Yeah, we went way back. Okay, so the first thing, whenever I do WN equal turtle.screen, this says create a screen object for turtles. So WN is the name of that screen object. So it is an object-oriented thing here. And it really is better for us, I think, to look at it here at the end. Now, that set up a screen for our turtle. Now we're going to actually create a turtle named Alex.
Oh.
Because it's turtle, it's Alex in the example.
Leave me alone.
Okay, create a turtle object
Turtle.
named Alex.
I had a baby green box turtle when I was a kid. Her name was Penny. We got her like she was almost like less than a day old.
Okay, so now we're doing object-driven programming. We're saying use the forward method in the turtle object. We'll put all these keywords in here, named Alex. And we want to move it 150 units. units, it might be pixels, depends on how our turtles are working with the screen. Okay, so now we've moved Alex forward 150. Let's take Alex left 90 and then forward 75. I don't know. This is the one I think that you guys did. Let's run it.
I'll make him go in circles. I'm excited to learn how to do that.
So there's my dumb turtle.
Oh.
Okay, Alex.
Did yours do that?
Just change how I spell turtle and everything's fine.
No, I want to know what kind of methods, what kind of behaviors are available for turtles. Python turtle methods.
Oh, see, now I get it.
Giving me a problem with saying that turtle is not
Oh, so here's one. That one's kind of pretty. How many times has this been turned in as a final? Not by you guys.
No.
Let's
You
try this
just
one.
copied the example you gave. She's never seen this before. Comment, I
said-
took all night to do this.
Yeah, exactly. I deserve lots of extra credit. This was super hard. Okay, so let's do the sunshine. It's better than our turtle box that we were doing.
Man, impressive.
Okay, so I've got my I've got my turtle here. I'm just gonna start a whole nother one.
Mine says turtle has no attributes.
You have a space to do that.
I totally knew that.
Okay, let me get this one over here so I can see it, and then we can do this one.
What if you made a turtle program that drew a turtle shell?
Okay, so I'm gonna leave this turtle up here, and then I'm gonna do another one. So let's do sunshine.
I do what I want.
You're making what you do.
Now for my sunshine, we're actually gonna have two colors. So red and yellow. And this is a color list, right? Now I'm gonna begin.
Thank you.
Did that had trouble spelling yellow by leaving out the W at the end?
Yes, sir.
What is the the turtle that's created to do? You can comment it out and it still works.
Do what?
Oh.
The turtle that screen, the WN window.
Yeah, I think that the turtle, when you create a turtle, I think that by default it creates a screen, and I don't think it used to,
So how do you?
because all their examples always show that.
So for what we're doing right now, what do we want to do screen? How would we create two screens? Or
You
what-
should be able to create another one. Hang on and we'll try. Okay, so let's see if we can do this sunshine here. I have a bunch of stuff, and this is kind of interesting, and I want to show you the difference. Let me try to run this.
Oh no. Mine says it has an unexpected indent. What is?
I fixed it with my.
What'd you
So
do?
you have to do.
Big brain.
You have to put turtle.color, turtle.begin, fill, turtle.forward, turtle.left.
Okay, we can fix that.
Or whatever you want to create a turtle.
Let's do it this way. Let's do import turtle.
What did you put an unexpected indent?
It was
Alex
an
doesn't
indent
fix that.
Well, you have-
and fill.
You don't need the from, you already have it imported.
I know, but if you do from turtle import star, then you won't have to put that turtle word in front of everything. So let's try that.
Sorry.
What's the star mean? What does that mean special character wise?
The star means import everything from the turtle library and let me access it without that turtle keyword. Okay, so first thing that happened is my line printed out, because I left that old code in there, right? And then my sunshine printed on top of it.
I copied it right from what she wrote.
It's still giving me trouble.
What's it giving you trouble with?
No, you could do it. Turtle has no active.
Okay, so I don't know how to run this anymore.
What did you do?
Just see if
Let
there's
me
any
just copy your thing.
export now. I literally love writing words.
I'm dyslexic, okay? You love writing turtles everywhere.
It's singing Land Turtle and then
Sorry. Freaked you out. Okay, did you get it to work? Now let's look at that one. How did that work? First of all, this one, the sunshine, is just doing general turtle commands. It's not associated with a turtle object. So notice how that code is like different. It's still the same code, but up here, we're using a turtle object. And down here, we're just in general using turtle commands. So we're not using it in an object-oriented way. But either way is fine and either way works.
I would say, but more turtle dot color.
Now, our color changing from red to yellow, that ombre kind of thing it's doing, that's just a function of the turtle class. We didn't make that happen ourselves. We just, by passing two colors to it, the turtle class said, oh, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make the middle, the inner part, the first color, and the outer part, the second color. Now, our loop, just in this while true loop, just keeps going forever and ever and ever until the position of our turtle gets to be negative. So kind of going off the screen, and then it'll break, and that'll end our loop. Oh. I've got another one that's really cool, but it's like very mathy. Let me find it. Yeah, a lot of the turtle stuff, if you think about it, is pretty math oriented because you're
Coordinates.
the way you're using your coordinates and using formulas to decide where to go next. So here's a good one. Let's find a few.
Teach your kids the program.
Mm-hmm.
That's humbling.
Isn't it? Yeah, I don't know many kids that could do these. Don't worry. Oh, hey, okay, try this one. Can you put it in? It's only like 10 lines of code.
Are you wanting this in a new one or to comment?
I would do a new one. So this is going to be a circle spiral.
Yeah, that's what you does, right?
That's what I was saying.
For turtle. Oh, I get it.
Oh man, there's some of the capitalized in there.
Oh, wait.
What's the pen for? Have we learned pen and I'm being
Nope, you haven't.
Okay. Good.
When you use the pen object, it'll just look a little bit different than if you use the turtle object.
Okay.
They say it's an alias.
What's this called? Circles.
Circle spiral. So as you type in the lines of code, kind of try to be thinking about what it's doing that you've learned.
I was trying to Google it. I don't know.
Oh, it's just a race now? Okay.
Yeah, come on.
Are you doing the comments as well?
Yeah, you have to do the comments. That's a part of it. Oh.
said no comments.
Oh, I guess we're racing Thomas now too. Come on, Thomas. No, you gotta do the comments.
Is he not doing those awful
I
comments?
don't think either of the boys
I
are.
am.
Go on, Tomas.
Okay, that's what's gonna make it fair.
Mhm.
He's a quick typer right here.
He's back there not even clicking anymore because he's all done because he left out the comment.
She done warned us that if we left out the comments,
Mm-hmm.
take off points from here on out. She wouldn't do. And I got told.
No, I just lost a few points. Not trouble. So we're making a whole array here of colors, aren't we? And then you're going to ask how many colors?
No.
I'm done.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, I'm lying.
up.
Is it working?
No, I lied. I just figured it out.
And it worked. It was real hard.
I did not. I bet you use the turtle shells and banana peels in Mario Kart, don't you? Of course.
Especially the blue shell.
I bet you do.
Hmm?
I'm keeping it PG. We're in class.
I was like, "No, say that again?"
I'm done.
No. I'm
Now I'm
not
actually done.
Oh.
How many circles do I want? 5. Oh, wow, look at that. It worked perfectly.
Yeah, so remember I got this book out of a book for kindergartners.
So I do not feel bad acting like a child. then.
They're going to beat you all up. No, I don't think they know how to do it.
No?
Are you really done, Logan?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
he's
done.
done. I just saw it.
So
Okay.
when you do turtle.num input, it does like an input box. It's pretty cool.
What do you mean?
So it's asking for input on the surface you want, and it actually brings up this little
Oh,
box.
nice. It's in a little box. Cool.
Yeah, that's how much, that's how slow.
You're getting
I was like, we just need to.
You're getting it. Oh, that's cool.
No.
Wait till I'm done with college and I'm gonna do like back to type.
Typer in the box.
What is this? For?
Like how tall it is.
Oh, maybe this is dimensions of the box.
Yeah.
Like,
Four obviously
Four.
matters because you got that. So 4 was your default.
oh, 4. Okay, so 4 is default, and then
1 and 8 must be the range.
oh yeah. Oh, so it's like an auto check.
They're all cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be interesting.
So I want to do 1.
There
So
was, if there was a program that wrote programs. I mean, like,
It doesn't like my
totally
team.
new programs.
Oh.
Shut up. I'm trying to keep it I need your sass.
I did it on my first try.
I bet you did.
programs
Because you're a genius child. It doesn't like this one. Is it because it's all, that must be a new thing.
So we have the technology to make programs, write new programs, but they're really bad at it.
Color, nice color.
I don't know.
And we're
You know,
doing
we gotta put
programs
S on the end of
Yeah.
everything. Okay, so yeah.
Right.
Is it because it's all smooth? I didn't think it cared about that kind of stuff.
No, I think it's just color, not that right. That's fine. Okay, no, those are the spaces. Oh, not H1. I'm assuming.
He's like, leave me alone, they drink slow.
Oh, okay.
Color. Yeah. You can find it as color. There you go. No.
Why do you do?
I was trying to hit 4. I missed 10.
Yeah.
It's amazing how I can type that entire thing, but I can't hit it.
Oh, that's kind of like the code we were just looking at.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. One is pretty cool. If you do one, I like one.
Do you wanna
I'm trying to figure out how to do them in, are they
go
called-
ahead and show your screen so you can show everybody what it does, because I didn't run it.
Mandela. How do you pronounce that?
Mandela.
No,
I need you to
no,
stop
no,
sharing.
no. It's like a design that people get tattooed on them all the time.
Okay.
What are they? Oh, like that?
No.
Oh.
Okay.
Is it showing? I don't know.
Hang on.
Mandala. I was looking for those on how to do
Run it again.
It is.
There it goes.
that. Are you gonna do one?
I just thought it was.
Oh, it makes sense. It's supposed to be a little flashy.
That's what it, yay.
That's what it does.
Oh, one is
So-
cool.
Yeah, one's really cool.
Keep your stuff. That's us for all of us. You guys,
Oh, that's tricky.
last few minutes or lab time. Let me know if I can help with anything.
Nope.
8 minutes? No, go right ahead.
You got 20 some?
No, you're fine, you're fine.
Do we have homework?
No.
Yeah, I meant the extra.
So some people are still working on their final. And I need from you a mailing address.
Who's you? Me, you? Okay.
Uh,
I don't know. who's you.
Email it to me.
the
Yeah,
golf-
I was just gonna do a sticky note, but I'll email it to you.
But the golf game, do you just want us to automatically generate coming through illustrate? Because he says he's gonna rate for each variable the scores, so you don't want to input data.
Yeah, free total, that's a random number.
So it's always gonna be.
I will see you on Tuesday. Right.
If you want only.
I know.
Unless you're gonna make it really hard.
Enjoy it.
You can take it, that's fine.
I was gonna do like, I was gonna like. Like polls they do.
That's fine.
But
That'd
I
be
guess,
better, that's
I guess
better
I'll just do
program.
it. You still want me to do it one? Or do you want me to input their score for each one?
Yeah, it's up to you if you wanna go higher.
Actually, it'd probably be, no, I meant like, do you want me to input their scores? I can do that forever.
Yeah, if you
So
don't
I'll
wanna do
just
that,
take it random.
yeah.
Okay. And then
That'll
add
work
up
good.
the numbers. Okay.
Mhm.
I just want you
Okay.
to see and.
I already have what I got. I already know I'm doing.
Well, hurry up and get it done.
I really want to.
I know.
You know what? Just for you,
I
I'm
want
gonna also, I'm gonna do a turtle program where it makes it.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
I already have an idea of how to do it.
I was gonna do the name thing.
I'm gonna try that too, but I don't know if that's a lot through. So I need to
That's
individually,
so much like.
I need to individually code each letter.
Right, that's
And
what I was. You get bored halfway through it, you're like, eh.
You have some signs of my now.
Or makes it like perfect, like.
Okay, we got that.
Like, makes Oh, yeah, yeah, this must have been at this or whatever, I'm like always.
Students who do good on the final,
Okay.
or should we go through all three of those practice exams like as many times as we can between now and